Timmy loved his town, Applewood. It was a small place, everyone knew each other, they left their doors unlocked, kids played outside until dark. Nothing bad ever happened in Applewood, until now.
Something felt off. A chill hung in the air even when the sun was shining. Shadows seemed deeper, longer. I felt eyes on me, watching me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Very wrong.
Timmy's friends thought he was being silly. They laughed at his worries. But Timmy couldn't shake the feeling. Something was lurking in the shadows of Applewood. He just knew it. The feeling intensified at night. Strange noises seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Whispers followed Timmy. He was sure of it. Something was out there, hidden in the darkness. The old mill stood at the edge of town, a relic of a bygone era. Its once bustling machinery now lay silent, overtaken by the relentless march of time. Surrounded by trees, it had been abandoned years ago. The forest had slowly reclaimed the land, with roots and vines creeping over the stone walls, as if nature itself sought to erase the memory of the mill. No one went there anymore, except Timmy. The townsfolk whispered tales of ghosts and shadows, but Timmy was drawn to the mystery, the allure of the unknown. He loved to explore its dusty rooms and imagine its past. He would often picture the mill in its heyday, filled with the sounds of grinding grain and the chatter of workers. One afternoon, Timmy decided to visit the mill. The air was thick with the scent of pine and earth, and the sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over everything. The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the overgrown yard. The mill seemed to come alive in the twilight, its shadows dancing like specters in the fading light.
As I got closer, I felt that familiar chill. The air grew heavy, almost suffocating, as if the mill itself was aware of my presence. My heart pounded in my chest. Each step felt like a journey into the unknown, a venture into a world where the past and present collided. I peered through a broken window. The glass was grimy, covered in years of dust and neglect, but I could just make out the interior. Dust swirled in the dim light that filtered through the grimy glass. The room beyond was a ghost of its former self, filled with shadows and echoes of the past. Then I saw it, a shape, dark and hunched over. It was barely visible, a mere silhouette against the dim light, but it was there. It moved with a jerky, unnatural gait. Each movement seemed disjointed, as if it was struggling against some unseen force.
Timmy gasped. His eyes widened in shock, his mind racing to comprehend what he was seeing. His breath caught in his throat. He felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead, his body frozen in place. He couldn't believe his eyes. The stories, the whispers, they were all true. The mill was haunted. It was like something out of a nightmare, the kind of thing that lurks in the darkest corners of your mind, waiting to pounce when you least expect it. A creature made of shadows and fear. It was a manifestation of every ghost story he had ever heard, every dark tale whispered in the dead of night. Timmy ran home, his heart pounding in his chest. He could barely speak. He tried to tell his parents about the creature, but the words caught in his throat.
It's just your imagination, Timmy. There's nothing to be afraid of.
He tried to tell his friends, but they just laughed.
They called me Scaredy Cat Timmy. No one believed me. No one understood the terror I felt.
The weight of his secret grew heavier with each passing day. He started hearing whispers everywhere he went, whispers that seemed to follow him, to taunt him. They spoke of darkness and fear. They spoke of things that lurked in the shadows. Timmy felt isolated and alone. He was surrounded by people, yet he had never felt so alone in his life. The weight of his secret was crushing him. Timmy wasn't imagining things. The creature at the mill was real, and it wasn't alone. Soon, others started seeing them too. Fleeting glimpses in the shadows, unexplained noises in the night. The creatures were growing bolder. People were scared. Whispers of fear replaced the friendly greetings that were once commonplace in Applewood. The once peaceful town was now gripped by terror, but no one knew what to do. The creatures seemed to feed on the town's fear. They grew stronger with each passing day. Their appearances became more frequent, more terrifying. They were no longer content to lurk in the shadows.
I knew I had to do something. I had to find a way to stop them. But how could I fight something that no one else believed in?
Then the unthinkable happened. It was a quiet morning in Applewood, the kind of morning where the birds chirped softly, and the sun cast a warm glow over the town. But that peace was shattered when the news broke. Mrs. Wilkins, the kindly old woman who lived at the edge of town, was found dead in her garden. She was a beloved figure, known for her generosity and her beautiful flower beds that she tended to with such care. Her face was contorted in terror. It was a sight that no one in Applewood could have ever imagined. The horror etched on her features spoke of a fear that was beyond comprehension. Her eyes stared vacantly into the sky as if they had seen something unimaginable, something that had stolen the very essence of her soul. The townspeople were in shock. They gathered around her garden, whispering in hushed tones, their faces pale with disbelief. How could this happen in their peaceful town? This kind of thing didn't happen in Applewood. It was a place where everyone knew each other, where doors were left unlocked and children played freely in the streets.
I knew the truth. I had seen things that others hadn't, things that I couldn't explain but knew were real. I had seen the marks on Mrs. Wilkins's arms, strange, almost otherworldly marks that seemed to pulse with a dark energy. The same strange marks I had seen on the creatures that lurked in the shadows, unseen by most but very real to those who knew where to look. I knew they were responsible. The connection was undeniable and the realization hit me like a ton of bricks. But how could I prove it? The evidence was circumstantial at best, and the creatures were elusive, leaving no trace behind. And how could I stop them from hurting anyone else? The thought of another innocent life being taken filled me with dread.
Fear turned to anger. The townspeople, once united in their grief, began to lash out, their sorrow morphing into a desperate need for answers. The townspeople, desperate for an explanation, began to turn on each other. Suspicions ran rampant. Neighbors who had once been friends now eyed each other with distrust. The once tight-knit community was being torn apart. The fabric of their society was unraveling, and the sense of security they had always known was slipping away.
I felt a new sense of urgency. The weight of the town's safety rested on my shoulders, and I couldn't afford to fail. I knew I had to act fast. Time was running out, and the creatures were growing bolder with each passing day. The creatures were growing stronger, and the town was on the brink of chaos. The once serene nights were now filled with an eerie silence, broken only by the occasional unexplainable noises that sent shivers down the spine of anyone who heard them.
Mr. McAllister was a strange old man who lived alone in a rambling Victorian house on the outskirts of town. His house, with its creaky floors and dusty windows, stood as a silent sentinel, watching over the town from a distance. The townspeople often whispered about the eerie glow that sometimes emanated from his attic late at night. He was a recluse, rarely seen in town. On the rare occasions he did venture out, he moved with a deliberate slowness, as if each step was a journey in itself. His presence was always marked by a hush, as if the very air around him held its breath. Some people said he was crazy. They spoke of strange noises and odd lights, of shadows that moved on their own. The children dared each other to run up to his gate, but none ever had the courage to knock. Others said he was dangerous. They believed he was involved in dark, mysterious practices. Stories of curses and hexes swirled around him like the autumn leaves that gathered at his doorstep.
I had always been drawn to Mr. McAllister. He seemed different, special. There was a quiet dignity about him, a sense of wisdom that intrigued me. While others saw a figure to be feared, I saw a man with stories to tell. He had a kind face and wise eyes. His gaze was steady, and his smile, though rare, was warm and genuine. It was as if he could see right through to the heart of things, understanding more than he let on. One day I decided to confide in him. I told him everything. About the creatures, about Mrs. Wilkins, about the strange occurrences that had been plaguing our town. I spoke of the fear that was consuming the town, the way people looked over their shoulders and whispered in hushed tones. The fear was palpable, a living, breathing entity that seemed to wrap itself around the town, squeezing the life out of it. People were afraid to go out after dark, and even in the daylight there was a sense of unease that never quite went away.
To Timmy's surprise, Mr. McAllister believed him. He didn't laugh or dismiss his fears. Instead, he listened intently, his eyes never leaving Timmy's face. There was a seriousness in his expression, a depth of understanding that made Timmy feel heard and validated. He listened patiently to Timmy's story, nodding his head in understanding. Every now and then he would ask a question, probing gently for more details. It was clear that he took Timmy's words seriously, and that gave Timmy the courage to continue. When Timmy was finished, Mr. McAllister told him a story of his own, a story about a terrible accident that had happened in Applewood many years ago. He spoke of a time when the town was different, when it was vibrant and full of life. But then the accident changed everything.
The creatures are not just figments of your imagination, Timmy. They are real. They are the remnants of that dark day, the echoes of the past that refuse to be silenced. They are tied to the town's history, to the pain and suffering that still lingers. And they are connected to the town's dark past, the shadows that move in the night, the whispers that fill the air. They are all part of the same story, a story that has been waiting to be told. And now, it is up to us to uncover the truth and bring light to the darkness.
Mr. McAllister's words confirmed Timmy's worst fears. The creatures were real, and they were hunting the townspeople. But why? What did they want? And how could they be stopped?
My fear turned to determination. I had to find a way to defeat the creatures. I had to protect my town, my friends, my family.
The creatures seemed to know that Timmy was onto them. They were getting closer. He could feel their eyes on him, watching his every move. He had become their target.
One night, I woke to a noise outside my window. I could hear the creatures moving in the darkness, their raspy breathing sending chills down my spine.
Fear threatened to overwhelm Timmy, but he knew he couldn't give up. He had to be strong, for himself, for his town. He remembered Mr. McAllister's words. The creatures were tied to the town's past, to the accident. Maybe the key to stopping them lay in uncovering the truth about what happened all those years ago.
I took a deep breath and made a decision. I would face my fears. I would uncover the truth no matter the cost. I would find a way to stop the creatures and save my town. The fate of Applewood rested on my shoulders.